Okay, dramatic revision, you have the floor.
Well, firstly, I need to get you. From what I've heard from Zoom and watched from the debates, you don't believe that animals are worth anything, right? They don't worth any consideration, right?
No moral consideration. No, they are not a part of the moral system.
Mm-hmm. And how did you come to that conclusion?
I extrapolated that from studying a whole number of different moral systems, different cultures, and I took in evolutionary principles, and I came with observation to this conclusion.
Okay, so let's say that you found a human that you had no moral consideration for. Would you eat that?
Sorry, can you please repeat?
Say that you found a human that you had no moral consideration for. Would you eat the human?
It is impossible for me to find such a human.
But let's say that there was one.
It is impossible.
But
it would be a saying, can a god create a married bachelor? It is impossibility. It is a contradiction.
Well, there's a lot of contradictions that we like to throw out to people. That's the point of like logic, right? So the point of this contradiction is to talk about other contradictions that we discussed.
Okay, I do not know how I can answer the question with about impossibility.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. I will do the same thing I did with SD before I was unceremoniously banned.
You deserved it.
What do you mean?
Petty, please.
Okay. What trait of animal makes it so that if applied to human?
So you just want to lie then, right? Okay, I promised that I wouldn't interrupt, and I'm breaking my promise. This question has been asked and answered. Why are you pretending that it hasn't been?
You just said...
I'm more than happy to answer him the question. If you guys don't want to listen, we can move to another room.
SD. You just said that him and you had different ethics, so it's perfectly fair.
We do. That doesn't mean that the question that you're asking hasn't been answered, right? So you're just lying at this point. Why are you being dishonest? You can continue your conversation with Conan, that's not a problem. But you are now lying.
Well, how am I lying?
I've already explained it. Continue your conversation with Conan.
Okay. So, when looking at sort of like the metaphysical structure of our reality, there seems to be like a specific sort of connection between the severance of, like the human species and its animal counterparts. So I'm specifically wondering how you would incorporate that connection in regards to severing its like potential, if you mean what I say.
What connection did I sever?
Well, it seems that you're sort of like, how do I put this? Driving sort of wedge, between counterparts, when I think that we're probably a lot more closer than you would like to admit.
What do you mean?
We are sort of at a fundamental level, we are animals, right?
Yeah, we are.
I do not believe that we've achieved anything that makes us significantly different than the other groups.
That is correct. We achieved nothing special.
So therefore, we should treat all who we consider within our phylum and our groups equal and part of.
Well, we shouldn't do anything. There is no shoulds. Shoulds do not exist in nature. Only incentives to do things. There are no Either absolutism or universalism. There is just is, and
Okay,
there is no
so-
shoulds.
Okay, fine. So we is to treat them better. How about that?
I must admit, English is not my original language, not my mother tongue, but I never heard a sentence like that.
What do you mean?
We is to, you cannot is to, that is, that has no meaning, you just made things up.
Wait.
See,
wait,
can I
wait.
just jump in? No,
What's
we
up?
do have some shoulds, right? Like, we do have shoulds like you should not rape, murder fellow humans.
No, that is not so. You can absolutely murder your fellow humans. People murdering themselves, murdering people every day.
No, wait. You're basically hinting at the is-ought fallacy. You cannot go from a descriptive premise to a prescriptive premise. That is what you're getting at. But then,
Oh yeah,
but then
I've
you
actually
already
heard of that.
have.
Yeah, I've
Wait,
actually.
wait.
Oh wait, but this
No,
is
but
the
then-
kind of thing of my debate. But okay, keep going.
Okay, but then we already have some prescriptive premises, right? Like prescriptive goals. We have some prescriptive premises. You can actually go from prescriptive premises to prescriptive conclusions. So that's fine. So
No, well, prescriptivism, I don't believe it as such exists. And I don't know any of these, I don't know any example of this prescriptivism that you speak of. Can you please clarify?
yeah, if you
Yeah.
have a certain, who do you want? Who do you want to respond?
I think I will talk to you, but you sound more interesting than dramatic revision. So, yeah, give me an example.
I mean, you already have certain prescriptive goals, like we ought
Like-
to maximize human happiness.
Who said
From
that?
Oh, you don't have a goal like that? Okay. I mean, at that point, I would say that you're just a moral nihilist or something.
I'm
don't
not
have
a
any
moral nihilist. I think morality
Yeah,
does
what he
exist. It's
said.
not universal. We
Yeah.
only have, look, my definition of morality is purely descriptive, and it is interhuman system of behavior based upon existence of evolutionary trait of moral instinct. That is its definition.
Sorry, I
That
couldn't follow.
doesn't.
Okay, so whatever he said. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay.
So, you were responding to my is statement specifically. So
You.
what?
No, yeah. I'm responding because you cannot say you is to. That's not
Yeah,
how language works.
Isn't that how those prescriptive statements work? Right. So so because of X, we is to treat this equally. Right?
No is the proper word is should, and shoulds do not exist. You cannot say we is to treat. That is. You are just switching words without switching the meaning, and you are lost. And the meaning of the word is lost. So just because you try to do it, you are just making a
Wait.
travesty of English language.
Travesty of the English language is constantly evolving. I don't see a problem.
Yeah, and it's not
Like,
evolving
defining
with
it
you.
fixed term like
So
Okay.
don't take.
All right. So
I mean that. I'm sorry, but that is to will not work. That's absurd.
So what will work then? Is it ought then? Oh, we ought. We is ought to.
No, there is no obligations for us to do anything, and there is no need for us to do anything. It's all wants.
Well,
They are
like-
subjective and personal and on organism to
Uh-huh.
organism basis.
Yep, this is a similar argument that someone made in an Earthling Ed video. I remember that when he was like, debate me on this, and they're like, oh, we don't have to do anything. Well, if we don't have to do anything in a society, then why do we even like construct things, right? Like,
Because we want to do it, not because we need to do it, but because we want to do it.
but like certain things, I don't know, like why we create medicine or houses, we do that to live. It's like because we want to.
You don't need to live, man. Who told you that you need to live?
Well,
That's a
think
lie.
that- well,
You just
well,
want to live.
Well, PP thinks of the moral axiom.
Yeah, PP is, as he said, an idiot. I would not call him an idiot so
once again,
blatantly, but he is.
Conan,
They-
can I
he-
just like have a little word with you? Don't let him troll you about PP. It's not like he actually believes this. He's just here to wind you up.
Yeah, no problem. I am in the mood for being wind up. So where was it?
Fine, let's move on from that. Okay. Let's look into some other areas.
No, my point is we already have certain, norms as to how we need to conduct ourselves, as to what we need not do or should not do in the society. If you think that you don't have an obligation to not murder, rape fellow humans, then you are terribly mistaken. You already have those norms in place.
I will answer to you. Yes, I would say that it is immoral to harm another human, but that does not mean that you should not do it. You can do it, you will do it if that is your wish. Only thing that will happen to you is that you will break morality, and that would cause people to seek to punish you. They will not always succeed.
Okay, I can work with that.
And that is it. If you are not concerned about your safety and the safety that you staying inside the moral system provides you, you don't need to obey it, right?
Okay, I can work with that. But here's the thing, right? Like by the same token, by the same logic, it is also immoral to exploit animals, non-human animals, or to use them for our benefit.
They're not part of the moral system. How are they part of the moral system?
You're saying they're not part of the moral system?
Yeah, they're not. By the way, did I debate you at David Ram's server?
Wait. Let me respond to that.
That sounds familiar.
I understand that they are not part of the current moral system, but our vegan argumentation is they deserve to be part of the moral system.
Yeah, that's moral relativism. You are arguing for moral relativism.
You cannot, right? Like if your moral relativism is inconsistent.
No, but I'm not arguing for moral relativism. I am arguing for naturalism.
Wait, somebody else can exclude you. Somebody else can exclude you, just like you use moral relativism to exclude animals in the moral system.
But of course they can. So moral systems don't have to be consistent in order for people to have them, nor do they have to be consistent in order for them to be valid. People can hold positions all the time in which are exclusive to yours.
Okay, so if a rapist or a pedophile were to say their moral system need not be logically consistent and their moral system can include raping children as part of what constitutes moral behavior.
Pedophiles hold inconsistent positions all the time, such as I'm attracted to children, but I should not touch children.
Right, much like non-vegans, right? But that's the point I'm trying to make here.
What are you talking about? Non-vegans en masse don't believe that, like, they shouldn't. That was odd because non-vegans don't believe en masse, right? That people shouldn't kill animals for food. Most people believe that people can kill animals for food. Therefore, animals are food, and it's okay to kill animals for food. So I don't know where you thought the consistency was.
No, I'm just talking about. Odd. Yeah, let me talk about the consistency part. The pedophile holds inconsistent moral views, right? Like they wouldn't want themselves to be victims if they were in that position, but they're okay with victimizing others.
I have
non-vegans
no idea
also.
I have no idea if that's what pedophiles actually believe. What I'm telling
fine,
you
but can you
is
let me
that
speak
there
without
are
interrupting?
pedophiles. I'm sorry. I recall you interrupting multiple times other users. So let's not pretend that like we care about interruptions.
Okay.
Or interjections.
Then I'll also interrupt. That's fine. Okay. No, but here's the point, right? Here's the point. I'm trying to say that if you say logical consistency does not matter when it comes to morality, then you cannot have any coherent framework of what constitutes ethical behavior in a society.
That's not true.
No,
so
you're just going to have a social context.
People can hold inconsistent beliefs, opinions, moral systems all the time. It does not mean that it is necessarily invalid for people to hold those inconsistencies.
No, it can be shown to be logically invalid using truth tables, right? Using prop logic, your model system can be shown to be invalid.
Logically invalid inferences, once again, logically invalid inferences or beliefs, right, doesn't necessarily mean that they are non-valid, or in which we say non-valid or non-valuable.
So you're basically saying that you're going to have multi-valued axioms pertaining to different issues. right? That's just what you're saying.
Well, for one, if you're under the so for one, let's get into what consistency actually means. If the context remains the same, and one is therefore showing a inconsistent view, such as giving different answers for the exact same context, then there's a problem there. But if a context has changed, if someone is giving a separate answer for the now changed context, that does not imply inconsistency in the first place.
So if the context were killing sentient beings for food or for fashion or for entertainment or exploiting them for food, fashion, or entertainment, if that was a context, and if you say one group of sentient beings need to be slaughtered, it's okay to do that to one group of sentient beings but not to the other group of sentient beings, then you're obviously being inconsistent. If you say that humans,
the only thing in which you have kept consistent in that hypothetical is that they are, what's the word you use? They have sentience, but now you changed the thing. So the context has not
what did I
remained the
think?
same.
What did I change?
Something has changed. The thing in which is sentient.
No, I didn't change sentience, right? Both the beings that are being killed.
That's not what I said. Hey, you're talking so fast that you're not even listening. I said the thing in which is sentient has changed, not the fact that these things are sentient. So if I said a dog is sentient, would you kill your dog? And someone was to say, no, I would not kill my dog. And then I were to say a cow is sentient, would you kill a cow? And they said, yeah, I'd kill a cow. It's not inconsistent as the context has changed. The thing in which is sentient has changed.
I understand what you mean. Okay, so you're basically saying I'm changing a cow from a dog or from a human, right? That's what that thing has. That changes the whole context. That is what you're saying.
Context has now changed. This hypothetical, the story, whatever you want to call it, has now changed.
It has not changed, right? Let me, in terms of morality, it has not changed, right?
Yes,
for moral purposes, this hypothetical has remained the same because the cow is also sentient, the human is also sentient.
Nope, it hasn't changed for you because you don't see a difference between the two, probably. But it changes for a lot of other people because they see a huge difference.
Tell me what is the difference. Tell me what the difference is. Tell me what the difference is. What the moral difference is between the cow and the
human. For some people, one's a cow and the other's a dog.
That is circular reasoning, right? You're just saying, if I ask you what is the difference between a cow and a dog, the one is a dog, one is a cow. Your answer is self-referential to the question, which means it is circular reasoning.
Sorry, I said some people believe. Now, mind you, this isn't what I'm believing. It said people believe that these two things are different because one is a cow, the other is a dog. It's not circular merely because that's been stated. It's you haven't asked, right, what the exact difference between the two is.
If I ask someone what is the difference between a cow and a dog, that justifies murdering the cow and eating the cow, but not the dog. And if they say one is a cow, the other is a dog, that is the definition of circular reasoning. It's a form of argument by assertion fallacy.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean as to how that is circular, right? All you'd have to do is just ask, well, what exactly makes them different? Someone would probably say something like dogs are man's best friend and cows are food.
That still does not. That simply means that you have emotional proximity towards the dog and not the cow. But I don't see how that justifies violating the cow but not the dog, right? That's like me saying,
trying to convince you. It doesn't have to be justified to you.
I mean, it does, right? Like when you're causing violence in the name of your beliefs, of course you need to justify your beliefs,
it doesn't
right?
Have to be. No. Sorry.
It does. Let me explain.
Via the people engage in violence via the UFC by punching the hell out of each other all the time. They don't need to justify to you. Doesn't matter. They don't need to. And just to be clear, we can't enter into contracts with animals, and animals can't enter into contracts between each other.
Exactly. That's why you leave them alone.
Just hold on.
That's why you leave them alone.
Just hold on. People engage in UFC violence all the time. I accept that they are consensual, but if you were to ask someone, there are plenty of people out there who believe that the UFC is savagery and should be stopped because no one should be punching each other in the face. Arguing, but it's violence doesn't mean anything to the people who are engaging in UFC. They're engaging in UFC for whatever reason they want to, and it doesn't have to be justified for why the violence is taking place.
It's a false equivalence here because the people who engage in UFC, they are engage in a mutual contract.
There's no false equivalence if you are arguing about the instances of violence. If you're concerned about violence, then surely the violence shouldn't be violence in
let me add another qualifier. It's violence towards beings that have not consented to being part of that violent contract. Okay?
Great. They don't need to.
What do you mean? So you're saying that you can just go about harming anybody that is not even consenting to being violated?
Sure,
Yeah.
people do it all the time, but there's
Okay,
no
so
people do it all the time, but you
that is
haven't
not a
added in
justification.
people
That
do.
is not a justification.
Just
Just
to be
because people do it
clear,
all the time, that's not a
just to be
justification.
clear, just to be clear, I didn't finish what I was saying. Neither was I was saying that that makes it justified. What I said was, sure, people do it all the time, and there's no particular moral reckoning in which people must come to conclusions with in order for them to engage in that behavior. You're making the argument of this is really bad because of some moral qualm, but that's your moral qualm.
And my argument is others also need to see that moral qualm because they're not able to give a sufficient difference as to why between a cow and a dog or a cow and a human as to why that would be wrong with the cow but not the human.
Sure, if you believe that people need to see that, that's of your prerogative. I've seen it plenty of times, and I don't really care.
See, if apathy is just going to be your response to this, that does not constitute a moral
Mm,
justification. You
I'm
lost
not
the debate.
apathetic. I just don't believe that there's any difference between a dog and a cow in which I should not eat either.
So you either eat them both or you don't. Otherwise, your behavior is
I'm
inconsistent.
perfectly happy eating a dog.
Okay, what about a human? If I were to replace the dog with a human,
Probably wouldn't eat a human, but put me in a position in which I would, and I would.
okay, you have an alternative where you would eat a plant or a human. Why would you eat a human in that case? You wouldn't, right?
Depends.
Okay, so here we're talking with moral lunatics, right? Who are willing to say that
Great. So you
they're okay
understand.
with
Great. I
no,
just want to be very clear that at no point in this conversation did I insult you. But my
no, I'm
answer
not talking
was,
as an insult, right? I meant
depends, and
moral
a
lunatic
vague,
as a descriptor.
sorry, there's no such thing as being a
No,
moral lunatic.
moral lunatic was meant
Just to
as
be
a
clear,
descriptor, not
there's
as an
no
insult
such
here.
thing, just to be clear, there's no such thing as a moral lunatic. What you just found is you just found someone who disagrees with you and answered a vague hypothetical with a vague response in return. And your response to that is, whoa, this person is a moral lunatic. By claiming that your opponent is a moral lunatic, you're not actually making an argumentation or a response. You're just insulting them so that the rest of the
No,
audience can
why would I
respond and
have
get
a
held
moral
fast.
discussion? Why would I have moral discussion with a person that doesn't see much of a problem with eating a human? That just says depends on my preference. I might eat a plant or a human.
It
Is
definitely
that person
depends
even
upon the
eligible?
context of the
Is that person
situation.
is
It
that person even
definitely
eligible to have a
depends.
moral discussion with me?
Just to be clear, remember, in that hypothetical you gave me, now this is what's hilarious. In the hypothetical you gave me, you said,
Yeah,
but there's an alternative. There's a plant. And you said, would you still
yeah,
eat that human? And I said,
depends.
depends.
Yeah, so that means you're not able to make up your mind. It just boils down to your preference at that point, right?
No,
Like,
what that means is by saying, depends, that when you threw to me this weird and vague hypothetical, I
it's not a
responded,
weird and vague
when you
hypothetical,
threw
right?
to me,
Doesn't
when
matter.
you threw
Doesn't
to
matter if the
me,
hypothetical is
hey,
weird or
you are
crazy.
very upset, and I would like you to calm
One
down.
second, Patty,
Yeah,
When
Patty,
you
he,
just a
threw to
second.
me,
Patty,
that
here's the
vague,
thing. Here's the
when
thing.
you threw,
it's just one
to
at a
me,
time.
just
One at a
when,
time.
Patty,
no problem. When you threw to me that vague hypothetical, you said, but there's an alternative, there's a plant. And I agreed, there's an alternative, there's a plant. And I also said, depends. And it kind of depends upon what that plant is in order for me to make the right decision. If that plant is
okay.
a piece of grass, I'm going to choose the thing which gives me the most sustenance in little time.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? It doesn't matter if the hypothetical is weird or vague. Hypotheticals are used to
Okay.
illustrate. Wait, let me finish. Hypotheticals are used to illustrate logical gaps or logical inconsistencies in your worldview, right? Even if it was grass,
I
even
can
if it
give
were
you
to give me 50
hypothetical if you
calories,
want.
even if it were to give me 50 calories as opposed to a human, I would choose to eat the grass. Okay, that is good enough
Yeah,
for sustenance. Okay,
I'm perfectly fine choosing the 500 calories over the 50.
okay, that's fine, but that only goes to show that some people are just not eligible to have a conversation in morality
No, it
because they
shows
justify
that in a instance in
cannibalism.
which you it
They
shows
don't
that
have a
in a
problem with
instance
cannibalism.
it shows that in a instance in which you throw someone in a survivalist hypothetical, they're going to do the most extreme thing possible to an extreme situation.
Okay, but here's the thing: you're not in a survivalist situation. You have you have abundance of alternatives, right? You have a
Oh
human,
God.
and you
What do
have
you think the
80,000 edible
hypothetical
plants.
was?
You have
Wait, so
80,000 edible plants. Okay, let me change the hypothetical.
sorry,
Okay,
do you
you
think
think
that
there is
in
a problem with
any
that
given
hypothetical? Let me
situation,
change that hypothetical. Let me
great,
change
go
that
ahead and
hypothetical.
change the hypothetical. I
Yeah,
might
you
answer the
have a
way in which you
human.
finally won't cry
Yeah.
about.
Let me
Okay, you
move the
have a
chess
human.
pieces, but you don't get to move any
You
of
have
your
a
chess
human, and
pieces,
you have
right?
80,000 edible plants. You have a human, and you have
Yeah,
80,000 edible plants. What would
sure.
you eat at this point? What would
Oh
you eat
yeah,
at this point?
in that instance, I would recruit the human to get me those 80,000 edible plants so we can use the 80,000 edible plants. But as soon as that 80,000 edible plants run out or we for some reason lose our minds and decide to be like not people who can engage in agriculture, I'm eating that human. He's done.
Okay. Okay, here's the thing, right? Now you have a cow and 80,000 species of edible plants.
Yes.
Why would you eat the cow?
Is
Why
that
would you
cow
eat the cow?
is that cow pregnant?
How does it matter?
Is there more cows?
No, it's just one cow and 80,000
Hmm.
species of edible plants that you could eat for a lifetime.
Okay.
Okay?
So what I would do is since I have these 80,000 edible plants is I would fashion up a plow. I would attach it to the cow and use the cow to engage in agriculture to make more of those 80,000 edible plants.
Okay. But you wouldn't do that with a human, would you? You said you would use a human to
Remember when I
agriculture,
said
and
I
then you
would
would kill the human.
remember when I said I would recruit that human?
Okay. But you wouldn't ever
Mhm.
kill the human and eat the human, would you?
Well, in the other example you just gave me, I didn't kill the cow. I put a plow on the cow.
So you wouldn't kill the cow.
I put a plow on the cow.
And why is that justified?
Putting a plow on the cow?
Yeah,
Why was it justified for me to recruit the human?
it is not. That's my point. You could just eat the plants yourself.
It was sorry. You think that it's not justified to recruit a human so that we can both live?
So
It,
guys, maybe I can sorry for interrupting. I
You're
do
fine.
want
You're
to let
fine.
this just continue because it seems
Mhm.
like you guys are getting into this, but maybe a way to I could maybe give a possible interpretation of VSS's hypothetical to see because I think I know where he's trying to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
You're both getting a little lost in the weeds with respect, of course. So what I think he's trying to say is he's trying to say like if you had like lived in a world where you could just eat vegan or you could like kill a human and eat their meat, what would you choose to do? I think is like kind of his argument. And it's like independent of agriculture or anything of that nature. And VSS, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but was that what you were trying to go for?
yeah,
It's
my
weird. I don't
point
know
is
why he
like,
wouldn't just ask that question. Seems like he's I don't know why he wouldn't just ask that.
see,
Why
my
wouldn't you just
argument is
ask
this,
that
right?
question?
No, so can you repeat that? What was the other person's username? I can't see his username.
It's
My name
Zoom.
is
Zoom, but I'm very
Yeah,
curious
Zoom.
as to why you didn't just ask that question.
What did he ask? I'm sorry, I was checking out some messages. Can you just repeat your point? Sorry, I zoned out a bit.
Oh yeah. No problem. So my point is that essentially what you're trying to ask Patty is that if she lived in a world in which there was vegan agriculture and like vegan plant-based foods were all farmed and ready to go, and she could just eat that for her whole life, or
Right.
she could kill a human, what would she choose to do? That's essentially the nature of what you were trying to
I'm
ask.
curious,
No,
why
no,
does
I
it
feel
go
like
back to killing a human in a vegan world? Would not the ecosystem and animals still exist?
no.
So
My
I'm
point was
confused why it
slightly
went to the
different.
most extreme thing possible.
No, my point was slightly different. My point was to illustrate the importance of logical consistency. Without logical consistency, anybody could have any moral system, and in the
People
absence of
do
law, you could
have
justify.
any moral system.
They do
What
have
the
that,
fuck?
but that
Like
doesn't make it automatically
people
valid.
literally do have any moral system, and not a
But
single
here's the thing,
one is
Patty.
by
Just
default
because
true.
people have different moral systems, that doesn't make all of them valid, and that
Not
doesn't
a
mean you can act
single
on them.
one.
That
Not a
includes
single
yours,
one.
right?
Right?
It
This
doesn't mean you
literally
can act
includes
on them.
yours.
It doesn't mean you
Not
can
a
act on them,
single
right?
one. Not a single one is by default true. Not a single one is by default valid. What constitutes validity for one's now I understand logical validity, that's one thing,
Hmm.
but when you say validity you're not looking for the fact that hey this follows, you're looking for hey this is true.
Okay, here's the thing, right? You're talking about validity and soundness of an argument. That's one thing. But what I
Okay,
simply meant
you
was,
recognize that I just displayed a distinction between that being valid equals sound and valid equals true. I hope that you heard that, because when you just said what you said, it doesn't sound like you actually heard Patty speaking. You just wanted to respond to Patty speaking.
okay, so if you made that distinction, well and good. But what I'm trying to say is, just because people have different moral systems, which can be both valid and true, that doesn't mean they can act on that,
Not a
right?
single
You can.
one is by default true. We don't know what's true. We just come to conclusions of what feels right for us.
Okay, so that's where you're basically saying that from an epistemic perspective, we cannot pinpoint on any moral axiom.
I'm no philosophy buff, right? And so I'm not telling you that you can't say big words, but I'm not a philosophy buff.
No, but what I'm trying to say is, we don't know if not killing humans is the right thing to do or true thing to do. That's what you're basically saying. We don't know. It just feels right. That's the kind of argument you're trying to make. Okay.
Sure.
Am I characterizing you correctly? I don't want you to then cry about me strawmanning you.
Well, I don't understand what I don't understand what's not necessarily true about that. We do things in which is comfortable or right for us. And we create
Okay.
social contracts between each other so that we could have a stable and relatively not crazy society. But people
Okay, that's fine.
relatively do things about what's right for them.
Okay, that's fine. So you're basically saying social contracts are a good
Oh, wait a
enough
minute.
basis
Now,
to conduct a society.
every time you said what you're basically saying, you've end up. I'll just be real with you. You've end up kind of saying some stupid shit. So, I cringe every time you say what you're basically saying.
Okay, so you're not addressing the argument. You're just trying to, go on
No,
red
I
You
herrings.
didn't
did
provide
consent.
an
So,
argument.
No, he
based
basically
upon
said,
the
I'm
conversation
just trying
we've
to,
been
I'm just trying to
having,
steel man
based
you. I'm
upon
just
the
trying to steel man
conversation.
you
Yeah,
so that I
that's the
understand you
problem.
properly.
When you steel man someone, you often end up strawmanning them and then running with said strawman, which is what's happened repeatedly as
Okay,
we've had this conversation.
correct me if I'm strawmanning you. Okay.
Okay,
So why
no
don't you
problem.
provide the steel man version of your argument? I'm just genuinely trying to understand you so that I could respond. Okay.
No problem.
I don't want to just react. I want to respond. So
You're
you
good.
basically said, there is no system of morality, even though if it may seem consistent, that we could possibly know if it's true or if it's valid,
I care
right?
little for the consistency. The consistency is irrelevant to if something is true or not.
Okay. You're saying ultimately what matters is we are there by social contracts, because that way we don't tear the
I didn't
society
say
apart.
that that's ultimately what matters. I said that's what
Okay.
people do.
Okay. People adhere by social contracts because not adhering to them has consequences, legal consequences, right?
To some extent, sure.
Yeah, and social contracts are just basically agreements between members of a society to lead peaceful lives, right? Due to the fear of repercussions. If you don't respect someone else's social contract, if you don't respect your social contract towards someone else, they don't have to respect yours. That's what it boils down to, correct? If you don't respect someone else's right to life,
Not necessarily true, but it
what else is it?
legally
What else is it based on?
legally is the case.
Yeah, legally that's the case, right? So social contracts are just legal agreements.
Literally, social contracts for the most part are legal agreements.
Okay, but from past history, we've known that social contracts are not adequate representations of what constitutes morality. Okay, it's just a legal
Wrong.
agreement.
Wrong.
No, that is true.
Social
Let me
contract.
explain.
No.
Let me explain why. Let me explain why. You won't let me explain my argument? You won't let me substantiate my argument? Is that what it boils down to?
All right, feel free. It's going to be a waste of time, but feel free.
No, we have, we've had slavery, which was part of the social contract, but we recognized that it was not morally agreeable, and we decided to change it. We decided to exclude slavery from part of the social contract. So social contract itself is an evolving agreement.
Okay,
And
but that's
it does
not why
not.
slavery was abolished. So I knew from the get-go that it was going. I'm sorry, slavery was not abolished because people thought that it was disgusting. Slavery was abolished because economically it caused too much. So if I were to talk about, I don't know what it was like in the UK or whatever country you're from, which in many European countries, aside from the UK, slavery was not institutionalized within if you are from a European country. But in the United States, slavery was not abolished because people thought it was gross. In fact, Lincoln made it very clear that if he could keep the Union without abolishing slavery, he'd be happy to do so. People abolished slavery because it gave too much power to the South, just vote-wise.
Okay,
It
I
was
understand that, but no, but what you do think that slavery should not be part of the social contract, correct?
in this social contract that in the society in which I currently live in, I don't see any reason for slavery to exist. It doesn't
Okay,
mean,
and why is
right,
that?
that merely
Why is
because I don't believe slavery. Well, because number one, right, for me personally, just me personally, slavery hasn't exactly worked out for people like me. And then for two, right, there's just no reason to have it. There's nothing in which makes life more efficient with slavery going on.
no? But what mean it didn't work out for people like you or?
None of these things, I don't know, I'm black, so take a hint.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
So
I just thought it was some random profile picture. Sorry. Okay.
none of these things denotes the
Okay.
morality of the situation.
Okay. So you basically said it didn't work out for you, which means it was against your preference. It didn't augur well with your well-being. Is that correct?
Correct. Slavery did not go well with black people's well-being.
Okay.
But it did go
Um,
well for the American economy's well-being.
okay, and it also went well for the slave owners, correct?
Yep. Well, yeah,
Okay.
sorta.
Okay. So you do get the point, right? Like even if you don't call it
Yes, I
morality
get
at
the
some level,
point.
it's
You are
just
going to now equate American slavery to that of having animals.
yeah, it is. I mean, what we do to animals is nothing
Yeah,
short of
it's
slavery.
not. So,
It
yeah, it's
is.
not.
What is
No,
moral
it's
difference?
not.
What is the difference? What is the difference?
The main difference being that animals had more rights than slaves. They had more legislative care and welfare than that of slaves. And to be clear, animals
I wouldn't
cannot
say
be
that.
kept as slaves. No, sorry. Animals cannot be kept as slaves because unlike people, animals can't enter into contracts. Unless you want to call pet ownership slavery, I suggest you back off this point.
No, it is slavery. Pet ownership is slavery. We are
Pet
opposed to it as
ownership
well.
is slavery. Great. No, sorry.
Yeah, we are opposed
All
to it.
vegans.
We are opposed
No.
to it.
I really wish that you would not speak for all vegans. All vegans do not agree that pet ownership
No,
is slavery. This is like
uh,
saying that seeing eye dogs are also slaves. And
we
not,
asked
I
Young Gains,
guarantee,
Toy
I
Chief. Do you
guarantee,
guys agree that pet
I
ownership
don't
is
care.
slavery?
Sorry. These four or three people in the room, right, are not representations for veganism. They are vegans unique to themselves and yourself, but they are not representations for veganism. Many vegans are fine with pet ownership, and most
No, they're not.
vegans are fine with seeing eye dogs.
Wait, let me respond to this. Pet ownership, you're confusing, taking care of rescued animals, adopted animals with pet ownership. Okay, we are against breeding of animals for our companionship or for our entertainment. That is
Patty,
what I
Let's
Patty,
be
when
mean.
clear
you
about
get
what I
bored, right?
actually
I'm
said.
gonna leave you to it.
So that is
But
what
when
I
when
meant
you
by pet
get
ownership.
bored, just tag me in because I want to just like
No
murder this
problem.
guy. So
No problem. Let me
And
be
if you,
clear about
and if
what
you,
I actually said. What I actually
okay,
said was most vegans are fine with pet ownership. But when you heard pet ownership, your immediate response was most vegans are not okay with the breeding of animals. That's not what I
yeah, that is
said.
what pet ownership consists of, right? We don't own these animals.
But that's not
No,
what
you
I
have
said.
a different understanding of pet ownership. Patty, let me speak. Patty, let me speak.
But that was
No,
not what I said.
we
Look,
don't.
I can
We
be
don't.
very, I can
We
be
don't
very,
consider.
I can be very annoying if you want me to. I
You are,
don't want to be.
but
I
that's
can.
a different thing.
Oh, well, that's great. If I'm already annoying, then I don't have to apologize. But then I
Yeah.
apologize to the room and the moderator, which is Zoom, because I can be very annoying in a debate if I want to be. Now, I am making it very clear that I said most vegans are fine with pet ownership. They're not thinking about 500 years into the galactic future where one day pet ownership will be abolished because nobody's breeding animals. We're talking about today where people might go to a shelter and pick up a pet. The very act of having that pet is not an act in which is called slavery by most vegans. You thought that when I said pet ownership, you went 500 years into the future in which that's illegal and said, no, we're against pet breeding. But I didn't
No,
say
we are
pet
against pet
breeding.
breeding
I
even
said
today.
pet
We're against pet breeding
ownership.
even today. Okay.
Okay, you're not listening. When
Okay,
I
but
say,
No,
I'm
I did
just going to
listen,
repeat
right?
it.
I
I'm
listened
going
to
to
your
repeat
argument.
this
You have
one
a
more
different
time.
understanding of
I'm
what
going
it
to
means to
repeat
have a
this
pet.
one more time because you're not listening.
yeah,
When
let's just
I
let her
said,
finish and then and then you can give your piece. But yeah, Patty, continue.
No problem. When I said most vegans are fine with pet ownership, which let's be clear, you are not the representative for vegans. You are one
And
guy.
you are?
And you are
And you think you can speak for vegans when you're not even a vegan, when your
absolutely
views
not.
don't even resonate?
I'm Patty.
Okay.
I absolutely not.
And
I'm
I
fine.
as a
Absolutely not.
vegan can
Absolutely
represent
not.
the vegan
Absolutely not.
majority's
Absolutely
view.
not.
Hey,
Absolutely not. Absolutely
cockhead,
not.
stop interrupting, right? Just let us speak.
Absolutely not. I'm Farmer
No,
Patty.
I can speak for majority of
Okay.
vegans. I can speak for majority of vegans,
Yeah, no,
right?
you
As a
can't.
vegan,
So that would be
yeah, I
like
can.
Yeah,
me.
we'll see
That would
about
be
that.
like that would be like me, Patty, thinking that I could speak for a majority of Black people, which would be absolutely insane and narcissistic of me to speak for an entire community of people. Veganism is
So
an
if
entire
you look
community
at
of
the survey,
people. Veganism
if you look at
is
what
an
the scope of
entire.
veganism
So
is,
there is a point in which you're going to have to be muted, and that I don't want that to happen to you.
Yeah,
So
don't do it
no,
yet
because you're
because
speaking a lot,
he'll
you're not letting me
cry.
speak at all.
So
I
don't do it
don't
yet.
want. I don't want you. Yes, sir. So
You're not letting me speak at
Patty,
all.
my name. Okay, but I haven't finished my sentence, which you've repeatedly interrupted. So my name's Patty, right? Farmer Patty. Patty's a farmer, an actual farmer, and she's Black. I can't speak for all farmers. I can't speak for Black people. Black people and farmers are separate communities of people that have millions of people a part of it. Your name is VSSJ91. You're a vegan. I don't know what color you are. I don't know what your job is, but I know you're a vegan. And vegans are a group of people who have a common goal in which they believe that animals should not be exploited, tortured, murdered, whatever. And that's their right to believe that. In some ways, that could be a very brave and like amazing thing to believe, but that's their right. And they all have different opinions because they're human beings. They have different opinions, and you can't speak for all of them. And if you make claims that you're going to speak for all of them, I'm going to ignore that and literally just speak to you.
Okay, can I respond now? I would want you to mute yourself, just like I muted myself when you spoke for the last
I'll
1 minute.
mute myself.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
let
I think that's the
VSSJ have the floor by all means.
okay. Okay, thank you. So I think we can do that going forward. I'll mute myself when you speak. You mute yourself when I speak. Okay. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm not just speaking on behalf of vegans, right? But when you look at the scope of veganism as a philosophy, what is the logical entailment of that philosophy? It entails that you don't own animals, right? So pet ownership is slavery, and owning pets or breeding animals just so you could have entertainment or recreation or companionship, that is a form of slavery. Okay, we as vegans ought to oppose it because that is part of the philosophy of veganism. Okay, and I don't care if 99% of vegans are opposed to pet ownership. I would assume that if they're following veganism in a consistent manner, they would oppose pet ownership. But even if they don't, that is the logical entailment of vegan position. Okay, the logical entailment of vegan position is also, to be pro sentience and not just pro life or pro choice, right? But majority of vegans that I know of are pro choice because they have more leftist inclinations. But that doesn't mean their position is summarized by vegan philosophy at that point. Okay, they're informed by other ideological inclinations, but that does not mean it is consistent with veganism. But when you look at the issue of pet ownership, if you were to take a stance that is consistent with veganism, you would arrive at the position that pet ownership is slavery, and as a vegan, you ought to oppose it. That is what the entailment of the logical philosophy of veganism is. Okay, from that perspective, assuming majority of vegans are logical, I would say that pet ownership is. I would say that majority of them hold the view that pet ownership is slavery, is a form of slavery, and if they don't, then they're not being consistent with the vegan philosophy. That's what I would have to say. Just like they're not consistent with the vegan philosophy when it comes to issues like abortion.
Are you anti-abortion?
I am pro sentience, which means after the fetus attains sentience, I would take a pro-life position by default.
Interesting. We'll talk about that later.
I'm
So
getting a little bit sick of this. Like, can I have a shot? Like, does anybody
let me.
object to that?
Let's try to close out this. So first of all, bold of you to assume that most vegans are logical. I don't even assume that most regular humans are logical. Secondly, bold of you to even assume what veganism actually means or what slavery means for that matter. We can like mold and change definitions all we want to within conversations. I think that just shows a lack of discipline with words. I think that shows like disingenuousness in particular. Slavery has a pretty well-defined meaning. I didn't want to get into the semantics of what slavery means, but it seems like we'll have to. Slavery is about labor. That's what slavery really is about. Slavery is about labor, which is usually legally protected, and which someone does not receive an adequate return for the things in which they labor over. That's not what pet ownership is. Pet ownership is not about the labor in which an animal brings back into someone's life. While animals give companionship, while animals can absolutely be abused, that doesn't mean that by default it is slavery. That's a nonsense position about what slavery actually means and about what the legal status of a slave is in the first place. Pet ownership, not like slavery, involves that of a pet in some way being represented by its owner. This is not what slavery is. Slavery does not involve representation by said slave holder. Slavery actively acknowledges the humanity of said individual. Pet ownership acknowledges the place of an animal as being needed, that of having to be taken care of by humans. It seems to me that you want to use a word with a definitely horrible, malicious historical background for the effect of emotional appeal, not for the effect of actually being correct about the usage of words. And I think that that's disingenuous in nature. So that's me, just like, that's, if Essie wants to get into the conversation, I'm going to pull back a little bit, just so that you guys can talk. But I think it's very clear that you don't understand the meaning of words, nor did you seem to understand what morality entails.
Okay, can I just respond to that before I let SD talk?
Yeah, I think that's
Sure.
So slavery also has a component of restricted freedom. So when you bring a life form that is a sentient life form into existence, just so you could, derive, companionship and recreation and subject your will upon that
Great.
sentient
Children
being.
are now slaves.
Wait, you're not letting me finish. You're interrupting. I didn't interrupt when you were speaking. Okay, I muted myself. Can you extend the same courtesy to me? Okay,
I think she is extending the
with the animals.
courtesy. So.
Okay, with the animals, we subject them to our will. We keep them indoors when they would like to go out. We literally spay and neuter them, and we impose all of our, limitations on them. Right? That is a form of slavery. Okay, in that regard, it is slavery. Pet ownership is slavery. And when it comes to the very reason I joined was to debate two particular points. Right? One was about anthropomorphism, and the other was about how you're actually helping the dairy cows by relieving them of their milk in their udders. Right? Those are the 2 points I wanted to debate. That's the reason I joined this discussion. But here I'm just shocked to find that there are people who are disingenuous to actually state that they would just have a preference issue when it comes to cannibalism or eating a plant, for that matter. Right?
That's not
and then
shocking.
Well, look.
I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Look.
Go ahead.
So first of all, what does slavery mean? Because the definition you just gave applies to a lot of things. So what does slavery mean?
It has an entailment of deprivation of preference,
Great.
deprivation
Children
of autonomy,
are slaves.
autonomy as
Great.
well, deprivation
Children
of
are
autonomy.
slaves. Great. Children are slaves.
So if you
That's
want to
your
go into
position.
anti-natalism,
Sorry,
if you want to go
that's
into
your
anti-natalism,
position.
that's a different topic.
Children are slaves. No,
No,
I'm
if you
not an
want to
anti-natalist.
discuss,
I'm not an anti-natalist. I have 2 children. What you
no,
just
that's
said was
fine.
this, was that slavery
No,
is a violent.
wait. With children, we take care of them and we eventually give them their autonomy, right? Like we raise them to be autonomous agents eventually. But that's not the case with animals. They're always going to be subsistent on us, and when they're no longer profitable to us, we are going to murder them, right?
Well,
that's
false.
definition of
Dude,
slavery.
that's not what pet. I just want to be clear. We're not talking about livestock. We haven't even touched on livestock. We're talking about pet ownership. So this was what you told me about what entails slavery. You said that what entails slavery is restriction of autonomy, which, let's be clear, after you turn 18 years old, you're not a child anymore. You're now an adult. You're a legal adult. So you said that it's a
Right.
restriction of autonomy. You also said, you said one more thing. The other thing, I can't remember it right now, but it also applied to children. Children are restricted in their autonomy. They get vaccines when they want to. Their bodies are violated at the doctor. And they pretty much for the most part usually don't know why. They don't know what's wrong with them or why they're at the doctor. They get seen by other people all the time. They're taken to school without their consent. Plenty of things happen with children without their consent, in which I'm not denoting any negative thing towards, right? But children are disciplined, sometimes when they don't know why. The definition you gave is so broad that children can now be defined as slaves.
But then again, that goes into the territory of antinatalism. If you want to make it about that, that's
No.
or do you want to have it separately?
You're trying. No. Here's what you're doing.
No, do you want to
By
have that
saying
discussion
this is
separately?
about antinatalism, you're now trying to curb the discussion that we're having because you gave a really shit definition for something. The definition
No,
you
that
gave,
was
I'll
not a shit
repeat.
definition. It
The
was a dictionary
definition,
definition. It was a component of restriction of
that
freedom.
wasn't no,
Wait.
that's
One
not
at a
a
time, guys.
that's not a dictionary definition. A dictionary definition is not
Go
given
ahead, Zoom.
in parts.
Zoom is
It's
moderating.
given in which we see the forest it's given in which we're seeing a forest and not just the trees. The lack of autonomy for children means that children are now slaves under this definition. And let's be clear, you also said, but children are taken care of. So are pets. Children have legal rights. So, for example, children have rights, right? But they also have welfare. And if children are taken care of and are protected by the law, and animals are protected, pets are protected and also have their welfare recognized by law, then therefore, there's no real difference between that of the pet and that of the child. So to you, having a child is engaging in slavery.
Okay, let me respond to that. Okay, so with children, what are the rights that they are having at the that are ensured by the state? Right to life, right to bodily autonomy or bodily integrity, right?
That's not
Animals. No, that is true, right? You cannot mutilate a child. You cannot go about.
what's circumcision. What is circumcision?
I am opposed to circumcision.
Great. But circumcision is perfectly legal within the United States, Africa, and China, correct?
Which is exactly why we shouldn't even be talking about the legal system, right? Which is why I don't want to talk in terms of legal parlance. I want to talk in terms of moral
The moment
parlance.
you get into a conversation about rights, congratulations, you've entered the legal system.
Okay, let's just talk about morality, well-being, suffering, and preference. These are the things we need to talk about. We shouldn't be talking about rights. We don't have to.
Great. My children prefer that they not go to school. I take them to school anyway. Where's their body autonomy being protected there?
Because they need to get educated,
My
and if they
children
don't get
prefer
educated,
not being stuck with vaccines. I give them vaccines anyway. Where's their bodily autonomy?
because they could get sick and die.
Really?
Otherwise,
Because in the United States,
that's not an
perfectly
answer
legal.
to the question, is it?
And
Right.
you're just
No,
sorry.
but
He's right.
you are derailing the conversation from that of animal rights to now children's rights.
No,
That's what
it's because
it's a red herring.
In case
It's
you
a red
forgot,
herring.
It's because
That's not
I
a
want to
red
get at you.
herring.
It's me that's derailing it. But
That's not a red
Okay,
herring.
see-
You don't understand what a
It
red
is a red
herring is.
Oh,
You
I believe it was.
specifically gave a definition for what slavery is, and it just so happened that the definition was so broad that now we can include children under that definition. So here's your choices, right? Instead of just claiming logical fallacies where there are none. Your choice is to now change your initial definition of slavery or accept that children are slaves if you want to stick to that definition.
I would say children are treated as property and slaves until they become adults. That is the
There you
reality
go.
of it.
So you've now conceded that children are now slaves.
Yeah, children are treated as property. Yeah,
Excellent.
that's just how the society works.
Excellent. So after we get to that point, we must now accept that we have such different fundamental ideas and values of what things are and what words very mean that we can no longer further that conversation. I'm glad you conceded that point.
If that's your way of backing out of the conversation, that's fine by me. But
Incorrect. That's not what backing out
That's
looks like.
that's a stupid thing to say. Like,
Yeah,
why
that's
would
not
you
what
say
backing
that?
out looks like. It actually looks like giving you a break from saying something that is so abominably false, like
how is it false?
legally and
Children are
morally
technically
false.
treated as, in terms of social contracts, children are treated as property of the parents until they grow up, and or the property of the
Children are
state. If
not
they're,
treated as property of their parents. They are treated as in representation of their parents. Parents represent children. They don't own them.
well,
Parents, animal owners, do not represent their animals. They own their animals.
Hey,
so that
so
okay. If we
sorry.
have that distinction, once again, if we have that distinction,
Hey, shut
then
up!
yeah,
Don't
children are
Ownership
not
overtalk the
slaves.
moderator. Zoom's
ownership
moderating. Don't overtalk him.
ownership is a legal concept. So when you start talking about, look,
Right.
it doesn't matter how many times you want to get away
It's
from
not violent.
legality. When you say ownership, you have already made a legal argument.
Okay, that's fine. So if you say that children are treated as autonomous agents who are represented by their parents, okay, in that case, it is not slavery. Okay, I didn't know that. I'm gonna admit that. Okay, but if animals are treated as properties of their owners, that is slavery. So
Great.
I don't
So
know
now
how you have.
we have a disagreement upon what the very word slavery means. Slavery is about labor entailed. It's not simply about ownership of something. This would be like essentially me saying this, that if I have a DeWalt saw, right? And DeWalt is a mechanics company. They make tools. If I have a saw,
Never
simply
heard of
because
them.
you suck. Simply because I use this saw, right? And it's engaging in labor, but I'm not paying it. Therefore, it is a slave. So there's more to being a slave than merely that you own it.
What is it? Labor.
I think labor is a huge part of it. Is it able to
Okay.
engage in contracts? If it can engage in a contract and you forced it into this relationship and now you are deriving labor off of it, then that's
Okay.
slavery.
Okay. So don't we do that with animals already? Don't we force them into the conditions that we want them to be and provide us with benefits?
Animals cannot engage in contracts. So what slavery
Okay.
is denoting is the concept of ability to consent. We call it slavery because something could have consented, but it was forced to consent.
Right. Animals can consent. They cannot give informed consent, but they can still have consent or dissent. Animals
Great.
can dissent. And once again, animals can dissent to being forced into labor. Animals
Great.
can
So if
dissent
you hold
to
the
being
position
slaughtered.
that animals can, well, that's not true. Animals can't. So first of all, animals can't consent, nor can they dissent. So if we want to say that animals can consent, are you saying that animals can consent to sex with humans?
No, I distinguish between informed consent and consent.
What is informed consent versus consent to you?
Informed consent is when you're able to understand the implications of the transaction you're indulging in, like if there are any consequences to it,
Excellent.
if there are any, yeah,
Did you know that
like
monkeys can engage in prostitution?
I still don't think that is informed consent, informed at our level, right? Like they probably don't even understand in our terms, like diseases, pregnancy, what would happen if a child is born, how to
So
take
you
care of
think
its
that
finances.
you think that an animal in which is engaging in prostitution with another animal suddenly understands the consensual value of that?
Maybe they do in their terms. Maybe it's informed within their terms, but not in our terms. So
Okay.
that is not
I
informed consent.
accept that answer. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same line of what consent
Okay.
means. Great.
Okay.
I accept
So
that answer.
what I meant by dissent is animals have a preference against not being in a certain situation. For instance, someone's dog might growl at them being picked up in a certain circumstance, but in another circumstance, they may be totally fine with that. That is basically them acquiescing to that particular situation, and then in the first situation, they were dissenting to being picked up. Right? The
Great. I
growling
like the
is
example.
the
I like the example you gave about the dog being picked up. The dog gets
okay.
picked up, but let's say they're getting picked up at the vet and the dog growls. Should we put the dog back down or should we put the dog on the vet table?
I think that in that situation, you're acting on behalf of the greater well-being of the animal. You're not extracting any benefit for your own well-being, but for the dog's well-being. So it is
Ooh, I
acceptable.
like it. So now we are engaging in an answer of we need to do things for the well-being of the animal. If I have
Right.
an animal in which, let's say,
Mhm.
this animal is a cow, and
Okay.
this cow has to be processed. The only other thing that'll happen if this cow does not get processed, and processed means that it's slaughtered for food. If this cow does not get processed, then I have to find a place for it. And let's say the only place I have for it is a dark little barn.
Okay.
Can I process this animal? Because that's what's best for the animal.
Okay. Or you could have simply chosen not to breed this cow into existence, just to violate the
I'm
cow.
aware that people could have done things.
Just
So
tag me in, for
It's
it's
fuck's
okay.
sake.
It's okay that you wanted to like walk away from the question, but it's really
No, it's
not
not a
okay.
walk away from the
I'm
question. You're giving
aware
me a
that
false
people can
dichotomy.
do.
You're giving me a false dichotomy.
I'm aware that
You're giving me
people
a
can
false
do.
dichotomy.
I'm aware that people can do. Let's just be clear. This isn't a false dichotomy because you've already accepted the implication of do what's best for the animal, especially in involving their future endeavors. So you've already committed to that. So I'm
No,
not giving you a
it is
dichotomy
still
in
a
which
false
you don't
dichotomy.
disagree
It
with.
is still a false dichotomy.
I'm
Let me explain.
aware
Let me
that
explain.
people can do a lot of things before they do the thing. But in this do the thing, the person already
Okay.
has the animal.
Okay. Okay. The best case scenario for the cow is to spend the rest of its life, or his or her life, in a vegan sanctuary where the cow is not being violated for the
I'm
benefit of
aware
humanity.
that you want to walk away from the question and that
This
there
is
are
not walking
plenty of
away.
things
I
in
am
which could have happened
addressing the
in this
exact
hypothetical.
situation you put me in.
Remember earlier where you
No, no,
gave
no.
me a
This
ridiculous
is not walking away.
hypothetical? Remember
No, this is not
earlier when you
walking away.
gave me a very
This is not
silly
walking away.
hypothetical in which you
This
got
is not
really
walking
upset
away.
for me
All
and
right,
This is
guys.
me.
called me a lunatic?
This is me. This
I'm
is me
aware.
calling out your
Interrupted.
false dichotomy in
I'm
your own
aware.
hypothetical.
I'm
I'm
aware that
aware.
people
You're not aware of anything.
I am
You're not
aware
aware
that
of anything
people
here.
can do a lot of things before they do the thing. But in this do the thing, there is these two choices of I can either process
That is
this
the
cow
definition of
for
a false
food
dichotomy.
or
That is
sorry,
the definition of
what's
a false
false about the
dichotomy.
dichotomy?
That is the definition. You're just giving two options when there are multiple options.
What's false about the dichotomy?
What is a false dichotomy? You're just presenting two options when there are multiple options possible as to what
I am
could happen.
asking you, you've called it a false dichotomy. So I'm challenging whether this is a false dichotomy. What's false about the dichotomy?
Because it doesn't have to be a dichotomy here. There could be multiple options that are possible here as to what we can do with the cow. Okay,
Great. I don't
and
have
you're
a
presenting
car
the
and I don't have a phone. There you go. So there's this thing that I want to do, which is I need a place for this cow. I don't have a car and I don't have a phone to call no fucking vegan sanctuary. So I say this cow needs to be processed, or I got this little small space in this barn that the cow's going to have to live in for the rest of its life because I decided not to process it. Which one should the farmer do?
Okay, it's funny that you would accuse me of indulging in weird hypotheticals that are not possible, but then you're giving me a hypothetical where you don't have a phone
Oh,
or a
I'm
car.
100%
Let me
giving back
indulge.
what you gave me. I just want you to answer.
No, that's fine, but that's fine. No,
Because
that's just
I
hypocritical.
answered.
If you
Remember how I answered. Remember, your hypothetical was
no,
weird and
I'll answer this as well. I
nonsensical,
just wanted to
but
point out the hypocrisy of
I
my.
fully and happily answered it. And to your
No,
chagrin, you got very upset at my answer. So I'm
no, no, no,
fine with
Patty,
the answer
Patty.
that you give me.
But Patty, what I'm trying to say is, it was hypocritical of you to call that a weird hypothetical and just give me an even more weirder
Nigga, you
hypothetical.
can
Okay.
say that it's a weird hypothetical. I don't care.
Okay, but I'm gonna answer it. I'm gonna answer it. I'm gonna answer it. Right?
You
I
can
would
say
say
it's a
it's
weird
better to.
hypothetical. I agree it's a weird hypothetical,
Right,
but I'm
right.
asking
Let me
you.
answer that. Let me answer that. I would say it's better for the cow to spend the rest of her life in a barn, dark barn as
Okay.
it may be. That's fine.
That's fine. That's fine. I
Die a
see,
natural death.
right?
Yeah,
No,
that's fine.
that's fine. I see where
Right.
you are, right? I personally would just be fine with processing this cow for food. That's not a problem for me. I see where you are, like in your moral outlook. I'm not gonna like fucking vilify you over it, right? But I see where you are. We have such fundamentally different values about processing and eating animals, right? That it just is what it is. But I'm not going to vilify you over having that position. Just don't ever own cows. But like, I won't vilify you for having that position, even if it's
No, that's
weird.
fine. No, what I think is weird is breeding animals into existence just so we could derive benefit from them. That's
Yeah,
weird.
I don't
But
think that's weird, but
Who cares
that's a
if
that
you
is
feeling.
super
think it's
weird.
weird?
Okay, so I apologize, but there are other people in the conversation who also want to talk,
Sure.
and I have a loud mouth, and so let's back off a little bit.
All right, so it seems like SD wants to talk to VSS. VSS, are you up for that?
Sure.
Right.
Cool. So SD, the floor is yours. That was a good conversation, I guess, between you and Patty. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so what would be the like what would be your like you're a vegan, right? That's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, and presumably then you want to argue that I should be vegan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the argument then?
Do you want me to give like a proposition form argument? Because I don't have it ready. I'll have to spend some
No,
time preparing that.
you can do it in natural language. I don't expect
Okay.
you to
If it's
present it like
okay,
as a syllogism. That's fine. You can just speak normally.
sure, sure. If it's going to be just natural language, I'm going to just say this, right? If you and your loved ones were at the mercy of a mightier collective, you would want certain basic, inviolable, inalienable rights for yourself, and you wouldn't want these
What?
rights to be taken away.
Hang on, stop. Why are you telling me that?
I'm just saying that's like the premise of the thought experiment, right? Like if you and your loved ones were at the mercy of someone mightier than you, you wouldn't want certain things done to you no matter what.
Yeah,
You
but
wouldn't want your
that's what you're
yeah,
telling me, right? Why are
yeah,
you telling me
Wait,
that?
let me finish. Yeah, let me finish the whole thing.
Okay.
So you wouldn't want you and your loved ones to be ever killed. You wouldn't want you and your loved ones to be ever violated or taken have your bodily rights taken away, or done things to you against your will, right? That will harm you. You wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want your lives to be prematurely ended. You wouldn't want to be mutilated, maimed. You wouldn't want to be taken your body. You don't want your bodily fluids to be taken away for the benefit of
How many
this mightier.
premises are there?
I'm just adding some qualifiers just so you understand what I mean, right? So,
Well,
why
I
is it okay
obviously
for
understand
wait,
what
wait,
you
wait.
mean, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Let me get down. This is the last part.
why do you keep
Why?
telling me what I want?
No, this is something you would want for yourself, right? These basic considerations.
You just keep doing it. Why do you keep doing
Okay,
that?
maybe the way we can reword this is VSS can ask if SD if he would want those things instead of like maybe telling him he
Okay,
doesn't.
sure. If
All
you
right.
SD, if you had a loved one, a daughter or a wife, would you want her to be killed, or would you want them to be killed?
I don't know.
No, correct?
I don't know.
Okay, would you want?
I
Would
said I
you
don't
don't know?
know.
Oh, you don't know? Okay.
Well, no, I don't know. I don't have either of those things, so how would I know?
No, that's not a. I mean, hypothetically, if we were to assume that if you had
Yeah,
a daughter,
yeah, and I'm assuming, but I don't know,
if you had a
right?
daughter,
Do you want me to guess? Is that what you're asking me to do?
no, if you had a daughter, would you want her to be killed by someone, or would you not want
So
her to be
you
killed
are
by?
asking me to guess.
No, pick. You can choose one of the answers if you want.
But you're asking me to guess because I don't have a daughter.
That's fine. But if you had one, what basic moral considerations would you want for herself?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No,
Are
I
you sure
don't
about
know.
that?
I'm sure that I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, man. Like if I had a daughter, I wouldn't want her to be killed, or I wouldn't want
How
her
would
to
I
be
know,
maimed
right?
or used.
I don't have a
Right?
daughter. I don't have a
No,
wife.
that's fine. I don't have a daughter either, but if I had one, I
Right,
know that I wouldn't
so
want these things
you're
to my loved one.
assuming that you know what you would
Okay,
choose
let
in
me
that
change this.
situation, right?
No, that's fine. Okay, you exist, right? You exist. Let's not talk about your daughter. You exist. Okay?
Well, we can maybe agree on
Yeah.
that. Like, we could get into some problems about that if you wanted.
No, I don't want to go into the solipsistic thought, but
No, of
because that
course you
could be used to
don't.
invalidate just about anything, right? But I'm just talking about you.
Yeah,
I'm just
what?
talking about you. You exist. Let's not go into solipsism for benefit of both of our, sanity. But just
Sure.
let's just assume that you exist here.
Sure, we
Okay?
exist. Yeah, that's fine. Well,
Okay. And if you were at the mercy of a mightier collective, what are some things that you wouldn't want done to
so
you?
if right, if frogs didn't like if frogs had wings, they wouldn't bump their asses hopping.
No. You're not interfacing with my question, right? Like, what are some things that you wouldn't want done to you if you were
I
at
don't know.
mercy
Like,
of somebody?
do you want to suggest something?
Yeah. So would you be okay if somebody were to kill you?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
You'd be okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. You'd be okay with
Why
if
not?
somebody were to rape you? Would you be okay if somebody were to rape you and steal your bodily fluids?
Yeah. Stick it up my ass. It's gonna be great.
Okay.
What
So would you be
next?
okay if somebody were to make you produce offsprings and take those offsprings against your will?
Yeah, seems fine.
Okay. Would you be okay if somebody were to? I hope some vegan here is recording this just so we could
Well, it's being
get an insight into
recorded,
the.
right? I'm
Yeah, I
recording.
think
I'm
this,
It is okay. That's awesome. Okay. So
this
here
is
we
being
have on vegan that says he's okay with being raped. He's okay with being murdered. He's
yeah
okay with his
yeah. It's
children being
fine.
taken away.
What follows from that
Okay,
then?
that's fine.
Right? Because you didn't actually provide an
Okay.
argument in the first place, but even under a
Wait,
really
I'm asking. Wait, I'm
charitable
getting to the argument part, right? You never
interpretation.
allowed me to get my argument part. My argument would have been this, right? I wouldn't want certain bad things done to me if I were
That's
at the
fine.
mercy of somebody
Good.
else,
I
right?
understand.
So
Like
why am I
you've
doing?
conveyed your preferences. I understand
Wait,
your
wait,
preferences.
wait. Let me finish. So why is it okay for me to do it to those beings that are at my mercy if I wouldn't want those things
I
done to me?
didn't say that it
That's just my
was.
question.
I didn't say that it
Okay,
was.
okay, that is my argument basically.
You don't have an
I don't know.
argument. Like that's
No,
not an
that is an argument.
argument at all.
That is an argument, right?
No,
I
it's
told you I can
not.
only give you an argument in terms of natural language.
Yeah, I don't mind that it's in natural language. It's just that it's not an argument. All you did was
Okay, well,
appeal to emotion.
no, it is not an emotion, right? It's just
Yeah, it
consistency of
is.
preference across various levels of
Yep. And
hierarchy. If I
where
ever
do
at mercy of somebody
preferences
else,
come from?
ultimately, okay, at that point you just have to go into what do you say? Everything morality-wise comes down to preference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
what is
you
one thing?
have your preferences, right? I have
Yeah,
my
morality.
preferences, and if they don't align, right? If there's some
Okay.
difference between our preferences, what are we supposed to do about that?
I'm just going to say that what you indicate as your preference, you're not being
I didn't
genuine
give
here.
you any preferences, right? You can pretend
No,
that I'm not being
no.
genuine.
I gave you some suggestions. I gave you some
Yeah.
suggestions as to what you would want or what you
And
wouldn't want.
all you
You said that
did
you'd
was
open.
call me a liar.
No, I didn't call you a liar just yet.
You
I'm
did.
just saying that
You did.
were.
You said that
Wait.
you don't accept my answers because you think I'm being disingenuous.
Wait. I didn't get to that part. I didn't make that statement. I was
You
getting there,
did.
but
You
I
did.
just need
It's
that.
recorded. You did.
Wait, SD, just 1 second. See, if you were to say that you're okay with being raped, murdered,
Yeah.
have your
Mhm.
babies perpetually enslaved and slaughtered,
Yeah, it's fine.
Is this something that's happening in real life?
It
How does it
doesn't
matter?
it doesn't matter. Just let him carry on because
I just want to know what place is doing this so I can report them.
Oh, it's called animal agriculture. Every country, every farm has
no,
it. Patty,
it's
you're
not
probably
right.
indulging in it. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you should report yourself. Yeah.
As someone who, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I have yet to see that. Whew, I got to
No,
call
you're
somebody.
doing it to animals, right? You're doing it to non-human animals. So you should report yourself, by the way. But yeah.
Well, I'll be sure to do that.
Okay.
Just
But yeah, sadly, the entire
ignore
system is
Patty for the minute, right?
Yeah, but sadly the entire system is fucked up. But yeah, so here's the thing, SD. What I'm trying to say is,
Mm-hmm.
when you're just you're just indulging in this intellectual masturbation, if you will, to try and deny your own
But it was
biological
what
preferences,
you put
which are real.
forward, right? I didn't put this forward, did I?
No, but I'm saying you're denying them,
No, I
even though you know
didn't,
it's true
right?
of you.
What do I know is true?
You know that you don't want to be murdered. You know that you don't want to be raped.
How
you know
do
that
you
you don't want
know
to be
that I know that? Why are you telling me what I know?
Because that's a biological reality. If you want to deny that, you're just being a
How
sophist at
much
that. You're just
how
being a
much
sophist.
change do I have in my pocket?
No, you're just being a sophist. I don't have to know that, but I know that we as
No.
sentient beings
I'm not being
share
a
some
sophist,
biological
right?
realities.
No, hang on.
No, that
You're
is the
gonna
definition of
have to be
sophistry.
quiet because you are now being dishonest once again, right?
I'm not being dishonest. I'm
You
being
are being
I'm being
dishonest.
genuine.
You don't
SD.
know what I know, right? You don't know my thoughts. Stop pretending that you know my thoughts. It's not going to work out
So
well for you.
no, it's working out just fine and exposing your dishonesty here.
It's not, though, because you don't know how much change I have in my pocket, do you?
I don't have to know that, but based on certain
But you
biological
know my
realities we have, like,
thoughts. You know what I think.
based on the
You've
fact,
already said
based on the
that.
fact,
You know what I
based
think
on the
better
fact,
than I know what
SD,
I think. Yeah?
SD, based on the fact that we are both
Yes,
sentient,
sweetie pie.
I'm sentient. I know that you have certain biological preferences, and I have some
Do
biological
you?
preferences.
How do you know that?
How do I know you're sentient?
Yeah. How do you know anything about what I think? You're claiming to know my thoughts better than I know my
That's
thoughts.
deduced or discerned through inductive reasoning, right? You are
Except that you
I
could
just
be wrong, couldn't you?
I could be wrong about everything, right? Like everything except for
Yeah.
the fact that I'm conscious. Yeah, that's
No, you could
resorting
be
to
wrong
selection.
about that too, potentially, but unless you've, as you brought up earlier, solved the problem of hard consciousness, but you can't do that.
No, but
So
that's just
you
solipsism
you
again. But
don't know my preferences, do you?
No, I know your preferences enough to know that you don't want to be
No, you
murdered. You
don't.
don't want to be.
How do you know that?
I mean, without that, we cannot have any moral conversation, really.
Excuse me?
Without that fundamental axiom, I don't think there's any point in having any moral conversation, really.
Oh, okay, so you're conceding. That's fine. No worries.
No, that's not that's not me conceding. That's just me
Well, it
having a
is.
starting point. Which we can have
It's
a
you
worthwhile
asserting
conversation.
something that you can't establish, which I knew you were going to do from the beginning.
No. Wait. Without this starting point, there is no point in having any moral conversation. Just about anything would fly.
What's your starting
There'll be
point?
no concept of. So here you have people. Here you are denying the very basis of human rights, and
No.
then you want to see the validity of animal rights. So that's not going to work. If
I
you're going to deny
didn't
human
say
rights,
I
you've
didn't
already
say
lost
any
the-
such thing. Hang on, stop. I didn't say anything about
No, you've
animals.
already. So what is your starting point on morality? Let me just go from that perspective. What are your biological preferences, if you have any?
Why? Why does it matter? What does it matter what my position is?
Because that is what things are based on, right? We need to have some starting point, some axioms.
Yeah,
to
but you
build our
put
worldviews on.
forward something, right? It doesn't matter what my positions are. My positions could be terrible. It's not going to matter, right? It's an internal critique.
No. But what I'm trying to say is,
Yes.
without these starting points, we cannot have any moral worldview built on it, right?
Look.
So what are your starting points? What are your first principles? What are your axioms? What are your moral axioms?
Why would it matter?
It matters because without that, we cannot have any worldview. We cannot have any moral system.
No, you
framework.
can have a worldview, and I can critique your worldview. It doesn't matter what my worldview is.
Okay. If I were to state my moral worldview, here we go. Okay. This thing is like every sentient being has a preference for its own well-being and avoiding suffering. Okay.
And that's
And if you
something
go to-
that you'd have to prove then. Can you do that?
What is the basis? What is the meaning of being sentient? Right. You can experience feelings. Right. That is one definition. And we know that sentient beings by nature seek out what promotes their well-being and what causes them to avoid suffering. Even those, if those stimuli cause them physical harm, that if that promotes ultimate well-being, they do seek that out, right? Like for instance,
Which
there are
ones?
masochistic people. Like there are masochistic people, even though they might be harmed, they seek out harmful stimuli,
Right.
but because that promotes their well-being, right? So ultimately, we do
Yeah,
know
but
that
that's
morality
your
is about-
position. That's not my position.
So I'm just giving you my position for you to critique it internally if you have to, okay?
Well, I've
Because you
already
said,
done that.
What do you mean?
What do you mean, what do I mean? I've already
No, I
done
missed the
it.
part. What was the last thing you said? I couldn't hear you.
The last thing I said is, what do you mean, what do I mean? Like, I've already
Before
done
that.
it. Like, you've espoused a position that you hold to, right? That's correct, isn't it?
I hold a position that we have an obligation to be logically consistent in what
Yeah.
preferences.
And I
we would
disagree
want
with
to
that,
ourselves.
right? I have some other position. But it's
Okay,
not
why would you disagree with
it's
my
not going to
position?
matter what my position is. Right? We're talking about your position. I could
Yeah,
have the worst
exactly. So,
position in the world, right?
you haven't
I could be world champ
identified a
and
logical contradiction.
having crap positions, right?
No,
It's not
you
going to make
haven't
any fucking
disagreed.
difference.
You haven't identified a contradiction in my position because you haven't even heard my position.
I didn't say that I was going to identify a contradiction in your position.
Okay. You asked for an argument as to why I think everybody should be vegan, correct? That's how it started.
I did, and you didn't provide one.
No, I was going to provide you one, and you said I cannot make any assumptions about your moral axioms or your preferences. So I'm just going to, because even if I got to know your preference, that would simply mean an internal critique of your position, right? So I'm just going to give you my argument,
right?
Or my preference.
So it's your preference versus my preference. Which one wins out?
Which one actually holds biological validity?
No, I said
out.
Which one wins out.
Which one wins out?
Yeah.
It ultimately boils down to what your biological preferences are, and
right. So that's going to be subjective, right?
It's going to be subjective, but then it is also universal in a way.
So,
right?
so there's no reason why I should value your subjectivity over anybody else's, right?
No, I said your preferences might be subjective, but then they could also be shared universally.
Well, they're obviously subjective, right? There's no point in putting the word universal in there. That's not going to make any sense.
That doesn't mean they're unique in themselves, and they're not shared. They're intersubjective as well.
Sure, they might not be unique, but who cares? That doesn't matter.
It does. That's fine, right? There are certain preferences which might be unique and not intersubjective. There are preferences that are subjective. And,
okay, and so your position on veganism, that's a subjective position that you hold, right?
Yeah, like, everything is subjective, right? But also,
of course. So mine is that I don't value your position, I value some other position. It doesn't matter what the position is.
But your position is logically inconsistent. It'll
Says
be
who?
exposed to be.
What do you mean? You don't get to just assert that, right? You're gonna have to explain it. Where's the inconsistency?
That's because you will end up treating non-human animals in ways you wouldn't want to be treated.
Says who?
If you were
why are you telling me what I'm doing?
Well, unless you're going to be okay with, if you say that you're okay with being raped and murdered and holocausted, that's fine.
Sure. What if I bite the bullet on that, right? What are you going to do then?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have an argument left to stand for. So.
Is that a position you would hold for your loved ones?
Who cares? It doesn't matter, right? You wanted to provide an in principle argument.
Okay, that's fine.
All you have is. Yes, what?
No, this is the kind of bullet you have to buy. This is the kind of
bullet
you have to buy.
I haven't bitten any bullet. I haven't bitten any bullet. This is being recorded, by the way, just for the 10,000 people. Yeah, just for the 10,000 people that have come in.
No, it is being recorded, yes. And you just said you bit the bullet. What if you bite the bullet on that?
No, I didn't. Right? I think your listening comprehension is a bit subpar.
Oh, okay. Says the person who just said that he would bite the bullet on that.
Wait,
by
the way,
I didn't say that.
Sure.
Right?
You know what? Can I get a revisit of what the conversation is now?
Yeah, you can just do what you want.
Basically, what the conversation has been. Well, initially, I think Young Gaines wanted to talk, but the conversation's just been I guess random vegan shit. They initially wanted to talk about cows and something else, but it ended up being a conversation about I guess the very act of killing and eating an animal, and whether and for FVSS, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but he really wanted to talk about consistent versus inconsistent belief or logic.
Yeah, as if that matters.
Essentially, what's happening is VSS has been talking about a variety of things. First, he talked to Patty about ethics of killing and exploiting animals for food. Then they went into slavery and how to define it, and if children are slaves. Now he's attempting to convince SC, excuse me, to accept a vegan position and That's currently what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
Excuse
and
me.
I'm rejecting that he's exposed some kind of contradiction, right? Because I don't think he's exposed that.
Here's my argument, right?
Excuse me, just a second. I don't think a contradiction has been exposed in my position, right?
Okay, so you have two worldviews, right? One is a worldview where you'd be okay with being murdered, holocausted, raped. You'd be okay with your loved ones being murdered, raped, and holocausted, just so you could be logically consistent with what you do to animals. Okay, and then you have the vegan position.
That doesn't follow.
I feel like
that's a non sequitur, right?
no. I'm just saying
I
that you have these
object
two
to the
positions.
argument.
How do you reject that argument without being logically
I
inconsistent?
said I
Wait.
object to the argument.
As a side note, he can accept that, but at the same time, there's an infinite amount of like logically consistent positions for like all things.
Yeah.
So I would say that's
Right?
a pretty low bar to clear.
Yeah.
I can say, like, for example, only cute things have moral value. Animals are not cute, therefore animals have no value. And I've already had a consistent framework. It's not really. That's actually. I mean, again, you can value it if you want to. It's just not difficult.
Yeah, it's not a hill that I'm gonna die on.
but
It's just that this guy thinks that he's like.
No. But anti-intellectual. Here's the thing. What if I deem you as not cute enough, and if I use that argument to kill you, would that be acceptable?
I mean, it's subjective, right? So I would say,
yeah, who cares?
Enough to live. You might say not.
It would be consistent.
It's fine.
Wait. Here's the thing, right?
The problem is not
One last
unless you
point.
want to make VSS.
Hey,
You
there's
repeatedly keep
one
saying
at a time.
acceptable, right? We understand that the concept of something being acceptable is a concept in which is a personal value. If you want to make the argument of, but then society will collapse if everyone held these views, that's fine too. But you're like arguing two things out of your mouth, which is that acceptable moral wise, which denotes which is an implication of if it is morally true, or is it acceptable in terms of keeping society together? So which is it?
No, my point was, let me come to that. I think anti-intellectual said that there are many logically consistent positions. For instance, he gave the example of.
I said there are infinite logically consistent positions, not many.
Infinite of them, and I agree, right? And epistemically, we cannot know which one is the correct position, right?
So we're getting into meta ethics. So first of all, I personally, sorry. So me personally, I don't think there's any more facts. That's a whole other can of worms. We can start with the.
No, let him get into it because he's gonna tie himself up in knots.
The point being, every other logical consistent position will reduce to might makes right at some level, except for veganism.
That is
bullshit.
Nonsense.
Fucking horseshit.
No, it's true.
Veganism literally does. Veganism has to include might makes right. Veganism has to include that as well. Veganism is not some special molecule in which all other positions are might makes right except for veganism. You yourself could not even come to an agreement upon what vegans actually believe.
No, I do, right? Like, I told you, right? I cannot dictate the exact behavior of each and every vegan, but I told you if they're not against pet ownership, they're not consistent with vegan principles. That's all I said. Okay?
That's a point about that's a point about what you gave. If you hold the position, right, that vegans are not vegans, if they, I'm sorry, this is a whole can of worms. If you hold the position that vegans are not vegans unless they agree with me about this specific point, then you have already given into vegans can hold a lot of different positions. But that doesn't make them not vegans.
So if they eat animals and they call themselves vegan, that doesn't make them vegan, right? Similarly, if they support pet ownership and if they call themselves vegan, that doesn't make them vegan.
That's not necessarily true either. I've met a myriad of vegans who believe that some people are vegan if they're engaging in a certain practice in which allows them to eat meat but does not involve the explicit cruelty of something. Like, for example, picking up roadkill.
Okay, so let's talk about. Okay, that's a gray area. Let's talk about black and white, like incentivizing breeding animals and killing animals, and if they consume those animals, and if they still call themselves vegan, no, they're not vegan, right? Similarly, if they support pet
even
ownership,
that's debatable. A lot of vegans are actually fine with killing animals. It's just it's more like continuous animal
no,
production.
they're just plant-based. They're just plant-based. There's a difference
It
between
depends on your
being plant-based
definition
and
of
No,
there's a
we're
vegan.
difference
not
between
doing
being
that.
vegan.
Hold on, wait a
You all
minute.
have
Wait a
different
minute.
definitions.
We're not doing that. If
All right,
someone is,
one
for
at a time.
example, yes, sorry, Zoom.
No problem.
What's up?
Patty, you go. You go. You're first.
If someone is like a veganic farmer, for example, and they eat vegan, they believe in the principle not to like exploit animals, and they do things like, for example, they might like use a way to keep an animal out, or they might even use an organic certified pesticide or herbicide. You're